The film opens at an unknown point in the future, after a dangerous and highly contagious illness has spread around the world. The story doesn't explore the outside world much because it mainly follows a small family living in a remote forest area. Still, we can understand that the virus spreads easily, through touch and possibly through the air if someone is near an infected person. This sickness doesn't turn people into creatures or anything like that. It simply makes them extremely ill, and eventually they don't survive. Next, the story introduces an older man named Bud, who has already been infected. The signs of the illness are clearly visible on his body, and he can no longer speak. His condition is so severe that survival is impossible. His daughter Sarah sits beside him, crying and telling him she loves him, because she knows this is their final moment together. For the safety of the family, her husband Paul must give Bud a peaceful end and bury him. Their 17-year-old son Travis is also heartbroken. Paul and Travis place Bud on a wheelbarrow and take him deep into the forest. They wear masks and gloves because the illness spreads easily through touch. Paul had already prepared a grave. He asks Travis if he wants to say anything one last time. Travis quietly says, "I love you, Grandpa." Paul then gently puts Bud to rest, lays him in the grave, and burns the site with gasoline so the sickness cannot spread. Back at home, Sarah struggles with the painful reality of losing her father in this way. At dinner, Sarah and Travis can't eat because they're still grieving Bud. Later, Sarah tells Paul that Travis is too young to see such things, but Paul tries to calm her, even though hope feels uncertain in this world. Travis overhears them, comforts their dog Stanley, and goes to sleep. The house is filled with dark paintings and old family photos, showing that this land originally belonged to Bud, and the family moved here when the situation worsened. The illness has been around long enough for everyone to live in full survival mode. That night, Travis has a frightening dream about Bud. Sarah wakes him because someone might have entered the house. The family always sleeps behind a locked red door, their safe room for the night, and they never go outside after dark. But now, someone is trying to break in. Paul waits by the red door with his gun. The intruder bangs hard and tries to force the lock. Paul fires, but misses. The stranger immediately drops his weapon and says he didn't want to harm anyone. It was a mistake. Paul makes the intruder lie down, checks his hands and eyes for illness, then knocks him out for safety. The family brings him inside. Sarah watches him with a gun, while Paul goes out to confirm he didn't come with anyone else. When Paul returns, saying the man is alone, he and Travis tie the unconscious intruder to a tree, cover his head, and seal his mouth with duct tape. The family repairs the damage at the red door and changes its locks. Later, the man wakes and makes muffled noises, but Paul avoids him because illness symptoms appear only after about a day. So they keep him tied outside through the whole day and night. That night, Travis dreams he goes outside and sees the intruder with black, infected-looking eyes. By morning, Paul checks again. The man says his name is Will. Paul rechecks his hands and eyes and finds no symptoms. He tells Will he just wants to talk, but warns him by showing his gun. Paul shows the intruder water and tells him to speak honestly. The man wakes, understands the situation, cooperates, and answers calmly. He says his name is Will. Will explains that his family lives in an abandoned cabin 80 miles away. Their water finished, so he went out to search for supplies. He didn't know this cabin was occupied. He saw no lights and thought it was empty. He says he meant no harm. He was only trying to keep his family safe. He tells Paul his brother has died and that he, his wife, and their 5-year-old son fled the city when things collapsed. They don't know what's happening in larger towns. Paul asks if he saw anyone on the 80-mile trip, and Will says no. Will then offers a trade. They have food, 2 goats and chickens, and in return, they need water. Paul discusses this with Sarah. Sarah thinks Will probably saw the smoke when they burned Bud, which means others could have seen it too. Sending Will away could be dangerous. He might reveal their location. She believes the safest choice is to bring Will's family and livestock here because living together might improve everyone's chances of survival. Paul agrees with Sarah's plan. He takes supplies and a gun and prepares to go with Will to find his family. Before leaving, he tells Sarah and Travis that he may be gone for 3 days, and if he doesn't return, they must not come after him. He encourages Travis to stay strong. Paul warns Will that he will help his family, but if Will has lied, he will end him. Will thanks him. Paul unties him, tells him to sit in the back of the truck and guide the way. Will had said he saw nobody in the 80-mile journey, so Paul expects the route to be safe. They start driving, but suddenly gunfire hits the truck. Someone hidden in the forest shoots the tire. Paul grabs his gun, hides under the truck, waits for the shooter to come close, and then shoots him. When Paul gets out, he finds Will fighting barehanded with another man. Paul tells Will to step aside and immediately shoots the attacker. Will tries to stop him, but it's too late. Paul becomes suspicious and asks why Will wanted him to wait. Did he know these men? Will says no. He just thought they could question the attacker and learn useful information. Paul is angry because Will had said he saw no one on the route. Clearly, there were people here. Paul calms himself and gives Will a mask and water to clean up, unsure if the attackers were healthy or infected. Will begins changing the tire, and Paul drags the 2 bodies away. It looks like they may have been a father and son, struggling to survive like everyone else. Paul burns the bodies, then continues the trip with Will. The film cuts forward 3 days. Paul returns with Will's wife, his young son, and their livestock. He brings them home and introduces them to his family. Everything seems good. Paul explains the house rules to Will's family. No going outside at night. Everyone sleeps in separate secure rooms. Most work is done in daylight, and they share 2 meals together. Will's wife, Kim, and son Andrew are thankful to be there. That night, Will and Kim talk and laugh in their room, and Travis overhears them from upstairs. Next day, Paul, Will, and Travis cut wood. Will teaches Travis how to use the axe, which makes Paul happy. Sarah and Kim also become friends. With a few solar panels for charging batteries, life starts to feel normal, and the group experiences rare moments of happiness. Travis, who is growing up and unfamiliar with the outside world, has strange dreams, and after meeting Kim, she begins appearing in them. One night, unable to sleep, Travis finds Kim awake in the kitchen. They talk briefly, but when Travis looks at her too long, she becomes uncomfortable, and he awkwardly leaves. Next day, while cutting wood, Paul notices Travis watching Kim. He warns him that they can only fully trust their own family, even if Will's family seems good. Suddenly, Stanley the dog barks. Paul and Travis check but see nothing. Then, Stanley suddenly runs into the forest. Travis chases him immediately because the dog is his grandfather's last reminder and very dear to him. Travis keeps chasing Stanley even though Paul calls him back. He stops at a spot, scared, pointing his gun toward the trees as if he saw something. Will arrives, and Travis says Stanley suddenly went silent. Paul reaches them, scolds Travis for risking his life over a dog, and since they see nothing, they all head home. Travis remains worried, but Paul says Stanley knows the forest and will return. That night, Paul comforts him again and finds Travis drawing a strange creature in the woods, but he ignores it. He promises they'll search for Stanley in the morning, and Travis thanks him. Later, Paul and Will drink together and talk about life before the illness. Will worked in construction and mechanics. Paul was a history teacher. Will then says he is an only child, which confuses Paul because earlier Will mentioned a brother. Will explains that the man was actually Kim's brother, but he treated him like real family. Paul clearly doesn't like this, and his expression changes. It's obvious he becomes uneasy. Around midnight, Travis comes downstairs again because he can't sleep. He finds Andrew lying on the floor in another room, wakes him and takes him back to Will and Kim's room. Will had already heard noises outside and noticed their door was open. Then something falls inside the house, and Travis runs to Paul, saying someone has broken in. Paul grabs his gun and checks the house. They're shocked to find Stanley lying injured. Many questions come to their minds. Paul gathers everyone and tells them Stanley looks infected, so they have to put him down. Travis refuses and wants to see the dog, but Paul scolds him again and says they can't take that risk. A gunshot is heard, and Travis understands Stanley has been killed. Paul later burns the body. They discuss what happened. Paul says that for the next few days, only he and Will go outside, because they don't know whether the danger came from an animal or a person. Will then asks Travis if he opened the red door to go outside. Travis says no. When he arrived, the door was already open. Everyone is shocked because the red door is their only protection. Travis suggests Andrew might have opened it since he found him sleeping on the floor earlier. Paul thinks maybe Andrew was sleepwalking. Kim asks Andrew if it's true, but he says he doesn't remember. Kim then suggests maybe Travis was half asleep because Andrew is too short to reach the lock. Tension rises between the families, even though Will and Kim refuse to believe their son went outside, because if he did, he might have touched the infected dog. Before the argument grows, Paul steps in and says both families should avoid contact for a while. If Andrew is infected, everyone needs to take precautions, so Will's family will stay locked in their room with food for at least a day. Everyone follows the plan. Inside their room, Paul again asks Travis if he touched the red door. Travis says no, but he admits he did touch Andrew. If Andrew is infected, then Travis is also at risk because he wasn't wearing gloves or a mask. Paul tells everyone to wash up, and then they all sleep in the same room. That night, Travis has another disturbing dream. He sees himself walking through the forest with a gun, hearing Stanley barking. Then he wakes up coughing a black substance and sees his grandfather in front of him, along with infection marks on his own body. But it's only a dream. He goes upstairs and overhears Will and Kim talking again. Andrew is crying heavily, and Kim tells Will they need to leave before the others discover Andrew's condition, meaning Andrew is actually infected. Travis immediately tells Paul and Sarah. Now they must act quickly. Sarah says they cannot simply let Will's family leave, because when they run out of food and water, they might come back, which would be dangerous for everyone. She indirectly implies that they cannot let Will's family live, because infected or desperate people could threaten their safety. Travis begs Paul and Sarah to let Will's family go, saying they're only trying to protect themselves and anyone in their place would do the same. But Paul and Sarah refuse, which hurts Travis. He adds that if Andrew is sick, he might be sick too because he touched him. Sarah calms him and says he'll be fine. They head to Will's room. Paul asks if Andrew is okay, and Will says he just had a bad dream. Paul tries to check him, but Will won't open the door. When he finally does, Will suddenly points a gun at Paul, takes his weapon, and forces him inside. Sarah sees this from nearby, but can't act yet. Inside, Will tells Paul to remove his mask while Kim holds Andrew, crying. Will says they only want some supplies and will leave forever. Paul agrees because he has no choice. As they step out of the room, Sarah appears behind Will and aims at him, asking him to give his gun back to Paul. Will insists they only want to go peacefully. Sarah believes him and they lower their guns, but Paul jumps on Will, knocks him down, and takes back the gun. Sarah goes after Kim. Paul ties Will up while Travis listens from inside and becomes even more upset. Paul drags Will outside. Will, weak and terrified, suddenly attacks Paul and repeatedly hits him in the face. Sarah tells him to stop, but when he doesn't, she shoots him. Seeing this, Kim runs, and Paul asks Sarah for the gun to stop her. When she keeps running, Paul fires. The bullet hits Andrew, killing him instantly. Kim completely breaks down, screaming that they took her child's life. She says she doesn't want to live anymore, and Paul shoots her too. The film becomes extremely disturbing at this point. It's clear this was unbearable for Paul and Sarah as well, but they believed they had no other choice. Travis comes outside and witnesses everything, leaving him and the family in deep shock. Time passes. One day, Sarah sits beside Travis, whose body is now covered in boils. Sarah's eyes have also turned black, showing they are all infected. Travis closes his eyes, implying he has died. In the final scene, Paul and Sarah sit silently at the table, staring at each other, seemingly waiting for their own end. The film closes on this tragic note. No one finds peace, and everyone suffers in the end.